We have new details emerging about the murder of Annie Lay. Investigators now say that before her death, the Yale graduate student received a text message from person of interest in the case, Raymond Clark, asking her to meet with him. Now, how does this clue fit into the picture of this man at the center of this case? ABC's Andrea Canning has more.
Ray, did you do it?
Many are asking what motive could Raymond Clark possibly have for killing a coworker who had everything to live for, including a wedding.
There are two possibilities that play into this case. One is that they had some sort of a relationship, and it deteriorated at some point. He became obsessed and ended up killing her, unfortunately. The second version would be that there is no relationship between the two of them. The only relationship is what is in his mind.
A blog posted by Clark's fiancée acknowledges that there was gossip involving Clark at the lab, but adds this rumor of a fling is probably the most stupid thing I have ever heard. Another possible motive, the fact that Lay was getting married, could have triggered an act of rage.
Crime on college campuses is rampant, with over 35,000 documented cases every year, and many of them involve acquaintances.
College student Kristen Nowjocks was killed by her ex-boyfriend, John Peck, because she wouldn't get back together with him.
That's your fault. That's your fault, woman. I'm going to keep calling and calling and calling.
18-year-old Jessica Faulkner had no romantic relationship with fellow student Curtis Dixon, but his obsession led to murder. Her father made this heartbreaking call to campus police.
I just got a very disturbing call from a fellow student of hers saying that he's murdered my daughter.
A common theme in these type of homicides are that the person who commits the homicide tend to be controlling, tend to have trouble with relationships with females, becoming very upset when he could not control them.
As for Clark, police say he has stopped cooperating with the investigation. His lawyer says he has no comment. For Good Morning America, Andrea Canning, ABC News, New York.
And joining us now is one of America's top forensic psychiatrists, Dr. Michael Wellner, who's going to help us put the pieces of this puzzle together. Thank you very much for joining us, Doctor.
Good morning.
All of this evidence, all the theories seem to be moving toward a crime of passion. You say not so fast.
Well, look, she was engaged to someone else. I think it's disrespectful to her fiancé and even to her family to suggest that there was any intimacy in this relationship. What we all need to remember is that if this Clark is responsible, more crimes at the workplace, more homicides at the workplace, male on female, have to do with rejection than by far any other cause. And in fact, workplace homicides, rejection by one employee of another is actually a phenomenon that's far more described than confrontations over work or disagreement about policy.
The text message, the mode of death, the strangulation, what does it all feed into for you?
Well, I mean, mode of death, and this is from a forensic psychiatrist, I think it's a desecration to have to release that someone died of traumatic asphyxiation. With all this DNA, why do I need to know about that as a member of the general public?
Doesn't help you.
Not only if we can respect the dignity of the dying, we should respect the dignity of the murder. We don't need to know that. What we do have is a case where there's a lot of DNA, and we know that there was a planned encounter. Now, what happened in that encounter may not have been what he anticipated, and a confrontation that she was far more resistant, and it escalated to murder.
Now, on one hand, you look at this and say, but this man doesn't have this kind of past. Where would this kind of violence come from? You say, look at that past. Even something like membership in an Asian awareness club, you say, could be relevant.
You know, look, there are a lot of controlling men who don't kill. There are a lot of men who are even aggressive who don't kill. What do we know about the victim? She was not Asian, Vietnamese. What do we know about him? All we know is that he had some sensitivity to Asians. The Vietnamese experience in this country is a very special one because they came from a land where they were killed and where they were thought of by many Americans as submissive and lesser than. How did that play into an idea of rejection in a crime of rejection? What was it like for him to be rejected by not an Asian but a Vietnamese? And how did this encounter and its unexpected nature relate as much to a hate crime as it relates to a crime of passion? Because we don't have any evidence that there was passion for her to him, only that this was that she and he had communication, and he lured her on a pretext of something going on in the lab when they could be alone. That's all we know.
And tell me a little bit about this rejection. How does it work? Because he's the lab cleaner and she's the researcher. How does it work?
It's hard to tell. You see, this is an area where, as a forensic psychiatrist, you don't have the luxury of leaping. But what I am saying for the audience and for those who are scrutinizing this case, it's more important to understand his background, of his sensitivity about Asians and possibly even Vietnamese, if in fact he's the person responsible for this killing.
And there is a lot of evidence pointing that way, but you're saying just because the evidence is there, it's not so simple to assume why he did it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, with all of the evidence around, how can we say this was a premeditated murder, because so much was left behind to solve this case relatively easily?
Dr. Michael Wellner, thank you very much for the insight this morning.